everyone, I'm Kevin with JcrOffroad. In today's video, we're going to install our Ford Maverick gas tank skid. So here is kind of everything you should receive when purchasing this tank skid. You've got basically the 2 skid sections, 3 mounting brackets, and all the hardware required to get it installed. We'll start by showing you where these mounting brackets go up on the vehicle. So we'll start out by grabbing this mount. This is going to be the front mount for your skid. Before installing it, you will want to find the number 4 nut tab, which I have here, and slide it up into this kind of ovaled out hole. And you kind of slide it in at an angle like that, and then you can slip it back roughly centered on that hole. This is in front of the tank, but behind the factory evap canister and everything in here, and just behind our evap skid if you're equipped with those. So when you go to install the mount, you'll need to feed it up between the lines you see here and line this slotted hole up with the nut tab that you installed up into the body there. You'll then need one of the 3 1-inch long 5/16 bolts. These are what you're going to use to bolt all 3 mounts up to the vehicle body. And you can then reach in here and carefully get that started. Now, due to hardware access, this front mount will need to be tightened in place before the remaining mounts in skid section go in. So for that, you'll kind of press it up tight and line it up with the panel overlap or body gap, if you will, right here, as well as the other one that runs horizontally just along the front edge of the bracket up in here. And with everything kind of squared up there, you can secure this in place. For the second mount, since these two are pretty similar in appearance, it's going to be the taller of the 2. This will have to kind of slide up in here. You're working to the right of that first mount, but still to the left of the drive shaft in here. There's a factory hole up top that we are now going to have to drill out and install a 5/16 rib nut. If you've never done those before, we are going to walk you through how to get that installed, but hopefully you can see up in here, this is the factory hole. It's really the only through hole in this location, so it's pretty easy to identify. Just a little bit tight quarters in here to kind of show you as well as work in. So first things first, you will have to drill this hole out to accept that rib nut. I like to start with a 1/2-inch drill bit like you see here, and then we want to finish this hole out with a 17/32. So we'll just get our drill up in here and open this up. And then with our drill bit swapped out, we can finish out our hole. So with your hole drilled out, you want to test fit and make sure that your rib nut slips up in there relatively easily. Just a little bit of restriction is not a big deal as long as you can fully seat that up in the hole. You'll then need to install it on the rib nut installation tool. This is what we provide as a tool. It's a 5/16 through bolt with a flat washer, an oversized nut, and another flat washer. With it assembled in that order, you install the rib nut onto the end and thread it all the way in by hand. With it assembled, you'll need an 11/16 wrench to hold the nut here in the center, and then a 1/2-inch socket to drive the bolt in the middle so that it compresses this rib nut against the material up here on the body. Since we are working in tight quarters up here, we're essentially going to have to slip this whole assembly up in like this with the wrench in one hand, and then we are going to drive that center bolt to compress the rib nut using a impact and an extension on this socket. Now, when tightening this with an impact, you do have to kind of use your discretion and make sure that you're not over tightening it and potentially damaging the threads inside of that rib nut or on this bolt. So you'll notice your impact start to kind of speed up as it compresses the rib nut, and then once again slow down as it's seating against that material. You can then back things off, take a look at it, make sure it's nice and seated, and go a little more as needed. Once you have that riv nut fully seated and you're happy with things up there, you'll grab another 5/16 button head bolt along with your mounting bracket. You can then feed that up into this location and start threading your bolt into the riv nut. Again, we'll leave this just a little bit loose at this time. For the last bracket, we're moving kind of back toward the front of your rear tire here. In this location, you're going to need to use the remaining number 3 nut tab. You'll slide this one in through the slotted hole here toward the rear and line that up with the front hole that you can see right here. You can then grab the third and final bracket along with another 5/16 bolt and work up here to get this threaded into that nut tab. Now just note that you may have to get up here with one hand and kind of help guide that tab into the proper location while you're getting the bolt started in there, and then we'll kind of let this one hang and get our skid assembled to bolt it in place up here. So these two sections, there's really only one way to install them. You're basically lining up the 3 mounting holes here as well as the one out on this tab with the slotted mounting holes on the other skid section and installing more of those 5/16 button head bolts. Now, the only difference in this case is that you're also installing 5/16 serrated flange nuts here on the inside, or what will be the top of the skid. Once you have all 4 of those installed, you can start by tightening the one out here on its own individual tab. That should kind of draw these two together. With that tight, you can take a look at the small gap on this outside flange out here. You can kind of push these two together and close that up a little bit if you wish, and then tighten this outside bolt to hold it in place, and then come back through and tighten the two here on the inside. Once you have everything tight here, we'll take this back underneath the vehicle and start lining up the outside mounting holes with the brackets that we already installed. Now under here, we just took a jack and placed it under the skid to kind of support it while we get our hardware started. We then have a 5/16 button head and a nut, and we're working on the front mounting bracket and that small bolt-on section of the skid. Here, you'll need to kind of reach through and install the nut, lining it up with the slotted hole in the bracket, and then you can push the bolt in and kind of get these two lined up and started. Moving over to the next mount here on this front edge, you'll press this up and kind of line it up with the 2 slotted holes in that bracket and install 2 more 5/16 button heads here. With both of these installed and still just a little bit loose, we can go install our hardware in that third mount. At this point, as you press this up into place, you'll kind of need to pay attention to the cutouts on the bottom of the skid and make sure that they line up with both the studs and the standoffs on the bottom of your tank strap. And then you can come back here and line up your bracket and install more 5/16 hardware here. Those are the final 2 bolts that need to be installed, and with everything tight, you can now work your way back around the skid with your 3/16 hex and start tightening everything up while also paying close attention to all the clearances between the skid and the bracket and any of the lines surrounding it. Once you have all of your mounting hardware tight, this tank skid installation is complete. So as always, if you guys have any questions at all about this product or anything else we offer here at JCR Off-Road, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always send us an email at info@jcroffroad.com or call us at 269-353-1184.